Hello, friends. Part two of your podcast on Section 3.1 in the AP Stats book. We just finished making a scatter plot. We want to clean up this window a little bit and just make the scale something that's more useful so you can see where the values go from here. So let's just go from 25, always a little bit lower, to a little bit above by a unit, by a scale, I should say, that's a multiple of these numbers. So I'm going to go with 5, and then 750 to 2000. So I think we're going to go from 700 to 2100, and we'll go by hundreds. So this again is something you should be comfortable with, setting a window to make it something useful. And when I hit graph, there it is. So now my dots, my tick marks on the x-axis and the y-axis are something I know what they are. And again, if I want to see what the values are, I can hit the trace key, and every point, so this point right here is 62, 1792. So we got the scatter plot. You should have identified the explanatory variable as the mass. It's on the x-axis, which is a giveaway, but the mass, if you read the problem, informs the rate. Now part B says, is the association of these two variables positive or negative? Everybody in the room should know the answer to that. Everyone should be able to identify the form of the relationship. Remember, in the class, we're just really worried about linear or not. So if it's a question that we're actually going to do math with, probably it's going to be linear. And then is it roughly linear? Is it extremely linear? Is it moderately linear? You're going to pick the adjective that describes linear. And if it's a question about is it linear or not, then it could go either way. And then question about strength. Now, when I think strength, I should be thinking correlation. And everyone at this point should know that they can get the correlation value by going calc, stat calc 8, and then putting in the x's and the y's. Now, I'm not going to put these lines in. I just want the correlation values. So there's my correlation. Clearly, it's positive, so that's the direction, and it's 0.6, which is medium to weak. And I could do the same thing, hit second enter to save those steps, and then I just change the L2 to L4 and change the L3 to L5, enter, and I get a correlation here of 0.87. So remember, the L4, L5 correlation, 0.87, that was for females, and the 0.6 correlation was for males. Now, part C of this problem wants you to do all the problems together, which you should be able to do. You're just going to add those points in to the calculator and do the regression again and see how different it is for all of them together, because we've already looked at how the men look, how the females look, and then be able to talk about them together. So this problem, I'm just reiterating, you should know how to make the scatter plot. You should be able to compare two categorical variables by making the scatter plots with different little icons, and you should be able to interpret form, strength, and direction and do the linear regression to find correlation. All this should be pretty old hat. You should know the words, be able to use them correctly in your answers. All right, quickly, I'm going to flip through a bunch of scatter plots. I'm going to tell you what page they're on, and I'm going to tell you, if I need to, a little something about it. Now, this particular graph is on page 181. It is part of problem 3.7. Means the answer's in the back of the book. Read the question, read the answer. This graph is part of problem 3.8. It's on page 182. So the answer is not in the back, but they're asking you what kind of pattern here is, and what I'm going to tell you is that there is no pattern here. And so a correlation I would expect to be very close to 0, maybe a little bit above or a little bit below. But if you get an example like this, no correlation, very weak correlation, expect an R value close to 0. Notice on all of these scatter plots, you have a label of some kind in words. This one just says X and Y, of course, but you can see percent return on treasury bills, percent return on common stocks, IQ score, grade point average. This one's just X and Y. They're all labeled with a word and with numbers in somehow, some way. So when you make one of these, make sure you label it appropriately with explanation what it is and the units. This one and this one both appear on page 185. They are part of the text. Figures 3.6, read the explanation. They're getting ready to introduce correlation right before they show these. All right, one more podcast after this.